I'm Brooke, 27, and I thought I'd found the one in Jason after 2 amazing years together. We were that couple everyone envied until suddenly, we weren't. The subtle control started with comments about my clothes, then escalated to monitoring my friends. But nothing prepared me for that dinner party where he publicly humiliated me, declaring he had the right to go anywhere and do anything. Little did he know I was about to discover just how far his hypocrisy went. Before I dive into this story that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with double standards in relationships. Jason and I met at my college roommate Allison's housewarming party. I wasn't even planning to go that night. I had a major design project due for a client, but Allison insisted I needed a break. The universe might have something waiting for you, she had said. How right she was. I remember walking into her apartment, hair still damp from my rushed shower, wearing jeans and a simple blue blouse. Nothing special. I was grabbing a drink in the kitchen when I heard someone laughing, a warm, genuine laugh that made me turn. That's when I saw him. Jason was leaning against the counter, telling some story that had everyone captivated. Tall with dark hair and these incredibly expressive hazel eyes, he caught me staring and smiled. That smile could light up Boston during a blackout. You must be the famous Brooke, he said, walking over. Allison talks about her talented designer friend all the time. We started talking about my graphic design work, and unlike most people who nod politely when I explain typography choices, he asked intelligent questions. Jason worked as a financial consultant, which sounded boring until he described it as telling stories with numbers. By midnight, we'd migrated to Allison's balcony with our drinks, completely oblivious to the party happening inside. Our first date was the following weekend, a small exhibition at a local gallery featuring up-and-coming artists. He remembered when I mentioned loving modern art at the party. Jason was attentive that way in the beginning, storing away little details about me to surprise me later. After the gallery, we walked along the Charles River until sunset turned to darkness, talking about everything from our childhoods, him in Seattle, me in Chicago before moving to Boston for college, to our dreams, his consulting firm, my own design studio someday. Those first few months were effortless. We fit together like we'd known each other in some previous life. Jason brought me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. I surprised him with homemade lunches at his office. We established inside jokes and developed that unique couple language, sentences only half finished because the other already understood. By 6 months, our friends started referring to us as Brooke and Jason, like we were a single entity. We met each other's families. His parents were warm and welcoming when I visited Seattle, and my divorced parents both approved, which was a miracle considering they rarely agreed on anything. At the 1-year mark, Jason took me to a fancy restaurant downtown. I've never felt this way about anyone, he told me, holding my hand across the table. I know it hasn't been that long, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. It wasn't a proposal, but it felt like a promise. 2 months later, when his lease ended, moving in together seemed like the natural next step. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in South End, close enough to my office that I could walk to work. The second bedroom became our share office space, my design corner with colorful inspiration boards and his meticulously organized desk. We painted the walls together, assembled furniture, and argued good-naturedly about whose couch would make the cut. Mine won because it was newer. Left together was surprisingly easy. We established routines. I cooked dinner most nights because I enjoyed it. He handled laundry and most of the cleaning. Weekends were for exploring Boston's neighborhoods, trying new restaurants, or binge-watching shows under blankets when the New England winter was too brutal to face. Sure, we had disagreements. He was frustratingly neat, while I functioned better with a bit of creative chaos. He wanted to save aggressively for the future, while I believed in enjoying some of our money now. But these differences felt complementary rather than divisive. When we argued, we fought fair, no name-calling, no bringing up past mistakes, always ending with a resolution and often making up creatively in the bedroom. If I'm honest, there were tiny warning signs I dismissed. Like how he casually checked my phone when I got texts, or how he questioned me about my male colleagues more than seemed normal. Once, when my coworker Ryan gave me a ride home during a snowstorm, Jason was oddly quiet and distant the whole evening. When I finally asked what was wrong, he said, "I just don't like the idea of you alone in a car with another guy." I laughed it off at the time. Wasn't it sweet that he cared so much? There was also the time I went to a bachelorette weekend for my college friend and returned to find Jason had reorganized my side of the closet because it was too messy. Instead of seeing it as boundary crossing, I convinced myself it was helpful, even though a small voice inside whispered that my space should remain mine. But these moments were eclipsed by the good times, weekend trips to Cape Cod, surprising him with tickets to see his favorite band, the night we got caught in a summer thunderstorm and ended up dancing in the rain like children. When we celebrated our second anniversary, everything still felt magical. Jason gave me a beautiful pair of sapphire earrings that matched my eyes, and I gave him a vintage watch I'd been saving up for months to buy. 2 years down, forever to go, he toasted that night. Looking back now, that night was the peak before the steady decline began. If I had known what was coming, would I have done anything differently? Would I have seen the storm brewing behind those hazel eyes I loved so much? But life doesn't give us previews of its plot twists. And the Jason who would emerge in the coming months was so different from the man I fell in love with that sometimes I wonder if he was there all along, hiding behind the perfect boyfriend facade, or if something fundamentally changed within him. It started so subtly that pinpointing the exact moment is impossible. The shift was gradual, like washing the hands of a clock. You know they're moving, but you can't actually see it happening until suddenly it's have passed and everything is different. The changes began 6 months ago when Jason received a promotion at his firm. He'd been working toward this for over a year, putting in longs and impressing the senior partners with his financial analyses. I was genuinely thrilled for him. We celebrated with champagne, and I made his favorite steak dinner. This was what he deserved after all his hard work. His new position came with a corner office, a significant salary bump, and a different social circle. His team was younger, predominantly male, and according to Jason, work hard, play hard types. Initially, Jason would come home from happy with stories about his new colleagues, Tyler, who had backpacked through Europe for a year, Mark, who was training for an Ironman competition, and Derek, who seemed to know every bartender in Boston by name. The guys are going to a sports bar to watch the game Thursday night, he mentioned casually about 3 weeks after his promotion. I thought I'd join them. Sounds fun, I said, happy he was bonding with his team. I'll have a girls' night with Allison. That first boys' night, Jason came home at a reasonable, slightly tipsy but still the affectionate boyfriend I knew. He crawled into bed, wrapped his arms around me, and mumbled, "Missed you tonight." But the boys' nights soon became a weekly occurrence, then twice weekly. The return times grew later. Midnight became 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Text messages during these outings became sparse, often just at having fun, home later without specifics. When I called once at 1 a.m. wondering where he was, he texted back and irritated with the guys, "Don't wait up." Meanwhile, Jason's interest in our social life as a couple diminished. When I suggested dinner with my friends from work, he'd sigh and say he was tired from networking all week. When I planned a weekend trip to Vermont to see the fall foliage, he claimed he needed to catch up on work. Our once active social calendar dwindled to occasional dinners with his colleagues, events where I increasingly felt like an accessory rather than a partner. The comments about my appearance started subtly. "Is that what you're wearing?" before meeting his coworkers for drinks. "Don't you have something more professional?" before his company party. His criticisms were always framed as helpful suggestions, but they left me standing in front of my closet second-guessing choices I'd previously made confident. One Saturday morning, I was wearing my favorite worn-in jeans and an oversized sweater while sketching at our dining table. "Don't you think you should put more effort into how you look on weekends?" Jason asked, pouring his coffee. "Rachel always looks put together when we see her and Tyler." Rachel, Tyler's girlfriend, was a former model-turned-pharmaceutical sales rep who seemed to live in designer clothes. The comparison stung. "I'm just working on designs at home," I said. "It's not like we're going anywhere." "It's about pride in yourself," he replied, as if my comfortable weekend clothes represented some moral failing. Our text communication changed too. Where we once sent each other funny memes, random thoughts, or simple "thinking of you" messages throughout the day, Jason now took to respond to basic questions. Yet if I didn't answer his texts within minutes, I'd receive follow-ups. "Where are you?" or "Why aren't you responding?" The first major fight happened 3 months ago. Jason stumbled in at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, waking me as he crashed into the dresser. When I sleepily asked where he'd been, his response shocked me. "Out with clients, then the guys," he said defensively. I work hard and deserve to have fun. Not everyone wants to be boring and predictable. The word boring felt like a slap. I was worried, I said. You didn't text after 10 p.m. I'm not a child who needs to check in, he snapped. My job requires networking. If you can't handle that, maybe you should reconsider your expectations. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. When I tried to revisit the conversation, he claimed I was overreacting and creating drama where there was none. I began to question myself. Was I being unreasonable? Was this normal for someone in his position? Yet while Jason's social freedom expanded, mine contracted. When I mentioned after-work drinks with my team, he'd ask pointed questions. Who exactly will be there? Or is Ryan going? If I plan a weekend lunch with Allison, he'd text repeatedly throughout, sometimes even suggesting he might stop by. My phone, once private, was now subject to casual borrowing to check the weather or look something up, always with a lingering gaze at my notification bar. Meanwhile, Jason had added a passcode to his phone for client confidentiality. When I mentioned this double standard during a rare quiet dinner at home, Jason's response was dismissive. It's different, he explained, swirling his wine glass. My career is high stakes. I deal with sensitive financial information. Your work is creative. It's not the same level of responsibility. The way he said creative made it sound frivolous, though my design work paid well and I had built a solid reputation in Boston's competitive marketing scene. I called my sister Rachel one evening when Jason was out with the guys. She listened to my confused recounting of the changes in our relationship. Brooke, she said carefully, some of this sounds concerning. Derek used to monitor my whereabouts before we divorced. It started small but escalated. Jason's not like Derek, I defended immediately. He's just adjusting to his new position. The pressure must be intense. But Rachel's concern planted a seed of doubt I couldn't quite shake. My friends started noticing the change too. During a rare lunch with my college roommates, Allison asked directly, "Is everything okay with you and Jason? You seem different lately." Different how? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. I don't know. You check your phone constantly like you're afraid of missing a message. You've canceled plans last minute more times in the past few months than in all the years I've known you. And you keep saying Jason thinks or Jason says before expressing your own opinions. Her observation was uncomfortably accurate, but I wasn't ready to admit what it suggested. Instead, I recommitted to making our relationship work. Maybe I needed to be more understanding of his new responsibilities. Maybe I needed to make more effort with his colleagues. Maybe if I was the perfect, supportive girlfriend, the Jason I fell in love with would return. This determination to try harder, to fix whatever was broken, led me straight into the disaster of the dinner party, the night that would finally open my eyes to how far we had fallen. When Jason's boss Robert invited us to a dinner party at his home in Beacon Hill, I saw it as an opportunity to reconnect with Jason and show him I could fit into his new world. Robert was a senior partner at the firm, and a dinner invitation was both an honor and, as Jason emphasized repeatedly, crucial for my career trajectory. I spent the entire day preparing. I had my hair done professionally for the first time in months, splurged on a new navy blue cocktail dress that was elegant without being flashy, and even practiced small talk topics in the mirror, a habit from my shy college days. Jason had mentioned that Robert's wife Margaret was interested in the arts, so I prepared thoughtful comments about recent exhibitions and Boston's cultural scene. "You look nice," Jason said when I emerged from our bedroom fully dressed. The hesitation before nice made me second-guess everything, but there was no time to change. Jason was already putting on his coat and checking his watch. Robert and Margaret's home was a stunning brownstone with original crown molding and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in the living room. The housekeeper took our coats as Margaret greeted us warmly. "You must be Brooke," she said, taking both my hands in hers. "Jason mentions you all the time. He says you're incredibly talented." I glanced at Jason, surprised and touched. He hadn't complimented my work in months. The other guests included Tyler and his girlfriend Rachel, whom I'd met briefly before, and several senior colleagues I recognized from Jason's company events. The evening started pleasantly enough. The food was exquisite, a 5-course meal prepared by their private chef, and the wine flowed freely. During the appetizer course, I felt Jason relax beside me as Robert laughed at his comments about a recent financial policy change. Jason's hand found mine under the table and squeezed, a gesture of affection I hadn't felt in weeks. Maybe things were finally turning around. By the main course, Margaret and I had discovered a shared love of experimental theater. I was telling her about an immersive performance I'd seen where audience members followed different actors through various rooms of an old hotel. The most extraordinary moment was when the bride character pulled me into a small room and shared her doubts about the marriage we were all there to witness, I explained, animated by the memory and Margaret's genuine interest. It was so intimate and real I actually found myself giving her relationship advice. Margaret laughed delightedly. How fascinating, that reminds me of a production Robert and I saw in. Brooke always exaggerates these stories, Jason interrupted, his voice cutting through our conversation. The bride probably said 2 words to her, but in Brooke's mind, it becomes this deep, meaningful exchange. The table fell silent. Margaret's smile froze. I felt heat rising to my face as every pair of eyes turned toward me. I'm not exaggerating, I said quietly. It happened exactly as I described. Jason laughed, but there was no warmth in it. See what I mean? She can't help but dramatize. You always do this, make yourself sound more important in these stories than you actually were. The silence that followed was excruciating. Robert cleared his throat and asked Tyler about a client presentation, clearly trying to move past the uncomfortable moment. I stared at my plate, appetite gone, humiliation burning through me. It wasn't just the accusation that I was lying, it was the casual cruelty with which Jason dismissed me, the clear message he was sending to everyone at the table. Don't take her seriously. I'm the one who matters here. For the remainder of dinner, I spoke only when directly addressed, my earlier enthusiasm crushed. Jason, meanwhile, seemed energized by the incident, dominating conversation with industry anecdotes and strong opinions on everything from politics to wine regions. Whenever I ventured a comment, he would subtly contradict or correct me. Actually, the artist's work is considered derivative, or that's not quite right, honey, followed by what he deemed the correct information. By dessert, I was fighting back tears and counting the minutes until we could leave. When Margaret kindly asked about my current design projects, Jason answered for me. Brooke's working on some logos for a local coffee shop. Nothing major. He turned to me with a condescending smile. It's cute though. My major branding project for a national retail chain, the one I'd been excited about for weeks and had definitely told Jason about, was dismissed as some logos for a coffee shop. I didn't even bother to correct him. The drive home was silent until we turned onto our street. What is wrong with you? Jason suddenly exploded. You barely participated in conversation. Robert's wife was clearly trying to include you, and you just sat there like a statue. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You called me a liar and then spent the rest of the night talking over me. Don't be so dramatic, he scoffed. I was helping you. You were rambling about some weird theater thing and making Margaret uncomfortable. She wasn't uncomfortable until you interrupted. We were having a great conversation. Jason pulled into our parking space with more force than necessary. This is exactly your problem, Brooke. You don't understand professional settings. These people aren't your artsy friends. They're important business connections. So I'm just supposed to sit quietly and look pretty, I demanded as we entered our apartment. If that's what helps my career, yes, he shouted. I have the right to go anywhere and do anything I want. You need to understand your place. My place, like I was a possession to be positioned however he found most convenient. My place, I repeated, voice shaking. What exactly is my place in your life, Jason? Right now, you're being an obstacle, he said coldly. I've worked too hard to have you embarrass me. I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the edge of the bathtub, tears finally spilling over. Through the door, I heard Jason moving around the apartment, still muttering about my inappropriate behavior and how I just didn't get it. That night, I slept in the guest room. In the morning, Jason acted as if nothing significant had happened. He made coffee, scrolled through news on his phone, and mentioned casually that we were expected at Tyler and Rachel's for drinks the following weekend. When I didn't respond, he finally looked up. Are you still upset about last night? You're being overly sensitive. I was just trying to help you make a better impression. You called me a liar and dismissed me in front of everyone, I said. He sighed like I was a difficult child. I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt. But these dinners are important for my career, and you need to understand that. Not I'm sorry I hurt you, but I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt, placing the problem with my reaction rather than his behavior. It wasn't an apology at all. As Jason left for work, kissing my forehead as if bestowing a blessing, I sat at our kitchen counter feeling hollow. Was this really the man I had fallen in love with? Or had he been wearing a mask all along, one that was now slipping to reveal something much uglier underneath? I couldn't stop replaying his words. I have the right to go anywhere and do anything I want. The entitlement in that statement was stunning. But what bothered me more was the growing suspicion that his rights and my rights in this relationship operated under very different. Little did I know that my suspicions were about to be confirmed in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The day after the dinner party, I met Allison for coffee, desperate to talk to someone who knew me before Jason, someone who might help me make sense of what was happening. I feel like I'm losing my mind, I told her, cradling my latte. The way he spoke to me, it was like he became a different person. Allison listened intently as I recounted the dinner party disaster. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Brooke, I need to tell you something," she said, her expression serious. "I wasn't sure if I should, but after what you've just told me." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Last week, I saw Jason at Soralina with a woman. They looked close. When I texted you asking if you were there, you said you were working late." "It was probably just a colleague," I said automatically. "He meets with clients all the time." Allison's expression remained doubtful. "Maybe, but the way he was leaning in, touching her hand, it didn't look professional." I defended Jason reflexively, telling Allison she must have misinterpreted what she saw. But her words planted a seed that took root in my mind. As I walked home, I remembered Jason's increasing secretiveness with his phone, the late nights with vague explanations, the new password I wasn't supposed to ask about. Our apartment was empty when I arrived. Jason had texted that he'd be working late again. I paced our living room, Allison's words echoing in my head. Finally, I made a decision I never thought I'd make, so I went to our shared iPad, the one we used for streaming shows and ordering takeout. Because we'd set up family sharing when we moved in together, Jason's messages sometimes synced to the iPad if he'd been using it recently. I'd never checked before. I had always believed privacy was essential in a relationship. But now, with my trust so badly damaged, I needed to know if I was being paranoid or if something more was happening. The iPad unlocked with my fingerprint, and there they were, his messages, emails, location history. With shaking hands, I began to look through them. What I found shattered any remaining illusions about our relationship. Text messages to me when I was out with friends. "Who are you with? What time will you be home? Send me a picture of where you are." Alongside these controlling messages to me were flirtatious exchanges with a woman named Megan from his office. "Dinner was amazing last night. You're amazing. Miss your laugh already. Meeting at 2. Can't wait for this weekend. Don't pack much." I scrolled back through weeks of messages, watching the progression from professional to personal to intimate. The timestamps revealed messages sent late at night, sometimes while lying next to me in bed. Messages sent during our anniversary dinner when he'd excused himself to take an important call. His location history showed dozens of places he'd claimed never to have gone: bars on the other side of the city, a hotel downtown, restaurants I'd suggested we try together but he'd dismissed as not worth the hype. The most damning evidence was an email chain with Megan planning a weekend getaway to Cape Cod the same weekend he'd told me he needed to go to New York for a business conference. The email included a line that made me physically nauseous. "Brooke is so focused on her little design projects, she has no idea. She's become so boring lately, all about routines and staying in. You're exciting, you get me." I sat on our couch, iPad in hand, for nearly 2 hours, reading and rereading, my whole body numb. This wasn't just an affair, it was a systematic betrayal combined with an ongoing campaign to make me feel inadequate while he did exactly what he pleased. When I heard his key in the door, I didn't hide the iPad or wipe away my tears. I sat waiting, evidence in hand. Jason's smile faded as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" I turned the iPad toward him, Megan's messages clearly displayed. "You tell me." His face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally, incredibly, indignation. "You went through my private messages," he demanded. "How dare you invade my privacy like that?" The audacity of his response momentarily stunned me. Then I found my voice. "Your privacy? You check my phone constantly. You track my location. You interrogate me about every minute I spend away from you, but you've been lying to me for months." Jason paced the living room, running his hands through his hair. It's not what it looks like. Megan is just a colleague. We've been working closely on a project. Don't, I interrupted. Don't lie to me again. I read everything. The Cape Cod reservation, the hotel downtown, how I'm boring and she's exciting. He switched tactics, his expression softening into contrition. Okay, I made a mistake. Things got out of hand. But it's because I've been feeling neglected. You're always so focused on your work. Stop it, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm inside me. I've been trying desperately to connect with you for months while you pushed me away. You monitor my every move while sneaking around behind my back. You criticize me constantly while building up this other woman. I need someone who understands the pressure I'm under, Jason argued. Someone who supports my ambitions instead of competing with them. I have always supported you. I stood up, anger finally breaking through the shock. I rearranged my life to accommodate your career. I endured your friend's condescension. I tried to be perfect for you while you were betraying me in every possible way. The fight escalated, with Jason alternating between attacking me for checking his messages and defending his relationship with Megan as not really cheating because they hadn't gone all the way, as if that technicality somehow absolved him. When I brought up his constant monitoring of my whereabouts, he had the nerve to say, "That's different. I was concerned about your safety." No, I said, you are controlling me while demanding complete freedom for yourself. I have more responsibility than you do, he insisted. My career requires networking, building relationships. Is that what you call sleeping with your coworker? Networking? His face hardened. You know what? Maybe this happened because you weren't exciting enough anymore. Maybe if you had put in more effort instead of settling into comfortable routines, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. It was like being slapped. After all his criticism, all my attempts to please him, he was still blaming me for his choices. Get out, I whispered, then louder, get out. This is my apartment too, he said coldly. Then I'll go. I grabbed my purse and phone, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold them. Where are you going? He demanded, following me to the door. Brooke, don't be ridiculous. Come back and we'll talk about this calmly. But calm was the last thing I felt. I needed space to breathe, to think, to process the enormity of his betrayal and hypocrisy. I'll be at Allison's, I said, not looking back as I left our apartment. On the Uber ride to Allison's, I stared out the window at the Boston streets blurring through my tears. The double standard was so glaring it was almost laughable. Jason had created a relationship where he enjoyed complete freedom while monitoring my every move, where his career justified any behavior while mine was just a little hobby, where his needs always trumped mine. And I had allowed it to happen, step by small step, justification by justification, until I barely recognized myself anymore. Allison opened her door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a tight hug without a word. That night, crying on her couch, I felt something shift within me, grief mixed with a new emotion I hadn't felt in months. Anger. Not the helpless frustration I'd been swallowing, but righteous, clarifying anger. Jason had wronged me, deliberately and repeatedly. But the hardest truth to face was that I had been complicit in my own diminishment. Now I needed to find the strength to reclaim myself and decide what came next. I spent 3 days at Allison's apartment, alternating between periods of overwhelming grief and moments of startling clarity. Jason called and texted constantly, oscillating between apologies, accusations, and attempts to minimize what he'd done. I miss you. You're overreacting. It was just a few messages. We can work through this. You violated my privacy first. I read these messages with a growing sense of detachment, seeing the manipulation techniques that had worked on me for months now exposed in plain text. Allison proved to be not just a sympathetic ear but a practical ally. She blocked out time on her work calendar to help me research emotionally manipulative relationships. Together, we read articles about gaslighting, projecting, and the cycle of control that can develop so gradually you don't see it until you're trapped within it. Look at this, she said, showing me a checklist of controlling behaviors. Monitoring your whereabouts, check. Criticizing you frequently, check. Isolating you from friends, check. Each item she pointed to was like a puzzle piece clicking into place. What I had experienced wasn't normal relationship turbulence, it was textbook emotional manipulation. I can't believe I didn't see it, I said, curled up in the corner of Allison's couch. Because it didn't start this way, she reminded me. It never does. It's like the frog in boiling water. If you drop a frog into hot water, it jumps out immediately. But if you put it in cool water and slowly heat it up, the frog doesn't notice until it's too late. On the second day, I called my sister Rachel. Unlike Allison, who had only seen the good parts of my relationship with Jason, Rachel had been warning me about similar patterns she'd experienced in her own failed marriage. "I knew something was off when you stopped calling as much," she said. "Your texts became so carefully worded, like you were afraid of saying the wrong thing." "Why didn't you say something?" I asked. "I tried, Brooke, but you defended him every time. Eventually, I figured you'd have to see it for yourself." Her voice softened. "I'm just glad you're seeing it now before you married him or had kids." Rachel's perspective helped me realize how isolated I'd become. I'd been declining invitations, limiting my social circle to Jason's approved contacts, unconsciously editing my own words and behaviors to avoid his criticism. By the third day, grief gave way to determination. I opened a new document on my laptop and began systematically documenting everything that had happened over the past 6 months. The dinner party humiliation. The double standards about phones and social lives. The criticism that had chipped away at my confidence. The lies about where he'd been and who he'd been with. Seeing it all laid out chronologically was both painful and empowering. This wasn't a collection of isolated incidents, it was a pattern of control and disrespect. Next, I created a practical exit strategy. I researched my legal rights regarding our apartment lease, both our names were on it. I calculated my savings and determined I could afford temporary accommodations while looking for a new place. I made a list of items in our apartment that were unquestionably mine versus those we had purchased together. Financial independence had always been important to me, so thankfully, Jason and I had maintained separate bank accounts with just one joint account for household expenses. I immediately transferred my portion of that account back to my personal account. I reached out to contacts in my design network to line up new projects, knowing work would provide both financial security and a much-needed focus for my energy. My colleague Mia responded immediately with an opportunity to join a major rebranding project, one that would keep me busy and well compensated for months. "Whatever you need, just say the word," Mia wrote. "We've missed your creative input." Her simple affirmation of my professional value brought tears to my eyes. While Jason had been diminishing my career as cute little projects, others in my field had noticed and valued my absence. I also researched therapists specializing in relationship trauma, knowing I would need professional help to fully process what had happened and prevent similar patterns in the future. Each action I took strengthened my resolve. I was not just reacting to Jason's betrayal, I was reclaiming agency over my life, piece by deliberate piece. On the evening of the third day, Allison sat down beside me as I closed my laptop after finalizing my exit strategy. "Have you decided when you're going to talk to him?" she asked. "Tomorrow," I said. "I need to end this cleanly face to face." "Do you want me to come with you?" she offered. "I can wait outside if you don't want him to see me." I considered it but shook my head. "I need to do this alone. But I'll have my phone ready to call you if things get difficult." That night, I practiced what I would say. Not to convince Jason I was done trying to make him understand my perspective, but to ensure I expressed everything I needed to say for my own closure. I rehearsed my points calmly, without the emotional pleading that had characterized so many of our recent interactions. In the morning, I texted Jason, "I'm coming to the apartment at 7 p.m. to talk, please be there." His response was immediate. "Thank God, I've been so worried, I know we can fix this." His certainty that we would reconcile might have swayed me a week ago. Now it only confirmed how little he understood the damage he'd done. I spent the day finalizing work arrangements with Mia and viewing a small but sunny studio apartment that would be available at the beginning of next month. The landlord, impressed by my credit score and employment history, approved my application on the spot. Having a concrete next step, a place that would be entirely mine, bolstered my confidence. Before heading to our apartment, I called Rachel one last time. "Remember," she said, "he's going to try every tactic to keep you charm, guilt, anger, promises. Don't get pulled into defending yourself or explaining your decision. You don't need his permission to leave." "I know," I said. "I'm not the same person I was last week." "No," Rachel agreed. "You're stronger, you're clearer, and I'm so proud of you." With her words echoing in my mind, I took a deep breath and headed to confront Jason one last time, not as the diminished version of myself he had created, but as the woman I was rediscovering, competent, clear-eyed, and unwilling to accept anything less than the respect I deserved. When I arrived at our apartment, I used my key but knocked first, a small courtesy that somehow felt important. This wasn't my home anymore. It was just a place I needed to leave properly. Jason opened the door immediately, as if he'd been waiting right behind it. He had clearly made an effort for this conversation, wearing the blue button-down shirt I'd once told him brought out his eyes, the apartment tidied, and I could smell my favorite pasta dish cooking. "You're here," he said, relief evident in his voice. He moved to embrace me, but I stepped back, maintaining distance. The surprise on his face at my rejection was the first indication that he had completely misread the situation. He genuinely believed this was a temporary fight that would end with reconciliation. "We need to talk," I said, walking past him into the living room but remaining standing. "I'm not staying long." Jason's confident smile faltered. "I made your favorite dinner. I thought we could talk while we eat." "I've already eaten," I lied, unwilling to participate in his choreographed reconciliation scene. "I'm here to tell you that our relationship is over." "Brooke, come on," he said, his tone shifting to the patient, slightly condescending voice he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. "I know I made a mistake with Megan, but it wasn't as serious as you're making it out to be. We can work through this." I shook my head. "This isn't just about Megan. This is about months of controlling behavior, criticism, and double standard." "I'm speaking now," I said firmly, surprised at the authority in my own voice. "For months, you've monitored my whereabouts while lying about yours. You've criticized my appearance, my career, and my interests while expecting unconditional support for everything you do. You've isolated me from friends while building your own social life. And when I finally discovered your lies, you blamed me." Jason tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "I'm moving out. I've already found a new place and will be taking my personal belongings with me. For share items, I've made a list of what I consider fair distribution." I handed him a printed copy of the inventory I'd prepared. He glanced at it, then tossed it aside. "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting because of a few text messages. Where is this even coming from? Did Allison put these ideas in your head?" His attempt to shift blame to my friend was so predictable it almost made me laugh. "No, Jason. This is coming from 6 months of being manipulated and disrespected. This is coming from finally seeing clearly what our relationship has become." His expression darkened. "Fine. If you want to throw away 2 years over one mistake, that's your choice. But this apartment lease is in both our names. You're still responsible for your half of the rent." "I'm aware of my legal obligations," I said calmly. "I've already spoken with the landlord. He's willing to let me out of the lease without penalty since you want to stay. You'll need to find a new roommate or cover the full rent yourself." The flash of panic on Jason's face told me he hadn't expected me to be so thorough. He quickly recovered, shifting tactics again. "Listen, Brooke," he said, voice softening as he stepped toward me. "I know I've been stressed with work and maybe I've taken you for granted. I'll delete Megan's number right now. I'll be more attentive. We can go to couples counseling." A week ago, these promises might have swayed me. Now they sounded hollow emergency measures to regain control rather than genuine remorse. "You don't get to control me anymore," I said simply. "Control you," he threw his hands up in exasperation. "I've supported you. I've given you a beautiful home, introduced you to influential people, helped your career." "My career was doing fine before you," I interrupted. "And it will do even better now." Jason's face flushed with anger. "You know what? Fine. Leave. But don't come crawling back when you realize how good you had it here. Good luck finding someone else who will put up with your insecurities and neediness." His words were meant to wound, to make me doubt myself. A month ago, they would have succeeded. Now they only confirm I was making the right choice. "I've arranged to pick up my things this weekend," I said. "I'd appreciate if you weren't here." "This is my apartment too," he snapped. "I have the right to be here whenever I want." "Then I'll bring friends to help," I replied. "Your choice." I turned to leave, but Jason grabbed my arm. "You're really doing this? Throwing away everything we built because of one stupid mistake?" I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. "It wasn't one mistake, Jason. It was a pattern, and yes, I'm really doing this." His expression crumpled, anger giving way to desperation. "Please, Brooke. I love you. I'll do anything. Just give me one more chance." For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. The Jason standing before me, eyes brimming with tears, looked so much like the man I had fallen in love with. But I reminded myself that this too was a tactic, the emergency glass of remorse, broken only when all other methods failed. I loved you too, I said softly. But that's not enough anymore. I deserve better than what you've been giving me. As I walked to the door, Jason made one final attempt. No one will love you like I did, he called after me. I paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at him. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The door closed behind me with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than any slam could have. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall for a moment, surprised to find I felt no urge to cry. Instead, there was a lightness in my chest, as if I'd put down a heavy burden I'd been carrying for months. I texted Allison, "It's done." Her reply came instantly, "Coming home." Home. Not his apartment, not our apartment, but home, a place where I was valued and respected. For now, that was Allison's spare room. Soon, it would be my own new apartment. And someday, it would be a relationship built on equality and genuine care. "Yes," I replied, "coming home." That weekend, Allison, her boyfriend Mark, and my coworker Ryan helped me move my belongings out of the apartment while Jason was conveniently at the gym. I took only what was undisputedly mine, leaving behind the furniture and household items we had purchased together. The financial loss stung, but my freedom was worth far more. In my final walkthrough of the apartment, I found a note Jason had left on my pillow, a last-ditch emotional appeal filled with promises and memories. I folded it unread and left it on the kitchen counter along with my key. Whatever he had written couldn't change what had happened or who he had revealed himself to be. As we drove away with my possessions, Ryan asked, "Are you okay?" I looked back at the building that had been my home for over a year. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm free." The first few weeks after leaving Jason were a roller coaster of emotions. Some mornings I woke up feeling empowered and certain. Other days brought waves of grief for the relationship I had believed in, the future we had planned together. There were moments when my phone would ring with an unknown number, and my heart would race thinking it might be him. Allison was an unwavering support during this transition period. She never complained about my temporary occupation of her guest room, even when I spent entire evenings spread across her living room floor with design boards for my new project. "Take all the time you need," she assured me. "Having you here is like having our college apartment back, minus the terrible microwave meals." My new studio apartment was small but filled with character, exposed brick walls, tall windows that flooded the space with natural light, and a tiny balcony barely big enough for a chair and a potted plant. But it was mine entirely, a space where every decision, from the color of the throw pillows to the artwork on the walls, reflected only my preferences. The first night in my new place was surprisingly difficult. After the constant companionship of living with Jason, then the comforting presence of Allison, the silence felt overwhelming. I called my sister Rachel in tears. "It's normal," she assured me. "When I left Derek, I slept with the TV on for 3 months because the quiet was too much. But eventually, you start to appreciate the peace of answering only to yourself." She was right. Gradually, the silence transformed from loneliness to tranquility. I established new routines: morning coffee on my tiny balcony, evening walks through my new neighborhood, weekend brunches with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Jason. Professional therapy proved invaluable. Dr. Winters, a compassionate woman with decades of experience in relationship trauma, helped me understand how Jason's behavior had followed classic patterns of emotional manipulation. "The most insidious aspect of controlling relationships," she explained during one session, "is how they make you doubt your own perceptions. When someone consistently tells you that your feelings are wrong or exaggerated, you begin to distrust yourself." Through our weekly sessions, I began recognizing the small compromises I had made, the warning signs I had ignored, and most importantly, the strength I had found to leave. Dr. Winters never condemned my choices or suggested I should have recognized the problems sooner. "Hindsight is clear," she reminded me. "What matters is that when you finally saw the situation clearly, you acted decisively." My career flourished in unexpected ways. The rebranding project with Mia led to connections with other clients who valued my creative perspective. 6 weeks after leaving Jason, I was working more hours than ever but feeling remarkably energized rather than drained. "Your designs have a boldness they were missing before," Mia commented during a review session. "It's like you've taken off some invisible constraints." She was more right than she knew. Without Jason's subtle criticism and dismissal of my work as cute little projects, I found myself taking creative risks I would have previously second-guessed. Reconnecting with friends revealed how much I had isolated myself. My college roommate Jenna visited from Chicago and was startlingly honest. "I almost didn't recognize you when you met me at the airport," she admitted over dinner. "Not physically, you look great, but your energy. For the past year, every time we talked, you seemed dimmed somehow. Now you're back to the Brooke I remember." The dimming she described resonated deeply. I had been slowly turning down my own light to avoid outshining Jason, to escape his criticism, to fit the increasingly narrow parameters of what he found acceptable. Not all friends were as understanding. Some questioned my decision to end a relationship that had appeared perfect from the outside. "But you guys were so great together," my friend Tara insisted when we met for coffee. "Everyone thought you'd be engaged by now." "What you saw was a carefully curated version," I explained. "Behind closed doors, it was very different." Some understood, others didn't. I learned to accept that not everyone would approve of or understand my choices, and that their approval wasn't necessary for my happiness. Jason's attempts to reconnect began about 3 weeks after our breakup. First came text messages expressing regret and promises of change. When those went unanswered, flowers arrived at my office with a card recalling our happier memories. Finally, a handwritten letter delivered to Allison's apartment. He didn't know my new address, detailing all the ways he was improving himself: therapy, self-help books, even a meditation app. Each contact stirred complicated emotions, but Dr. Winters helped me recognize these gestures for what they were: attempts to regain control rather than genuine growth. "Real change takes time and consistent effort," she reminded me. "It doesn't happen in a few weeks because you got caught or lost something you valued." I maintained my boundaries, responding to none of his overtures. Eventually, the messages slowed and stopped. Through mutual friends, I learned Jason had started dating someone new barely 2 months after our breakup, a clear indication that his transformation had been performative rather than genuine. 6 months after leaving, I unexpectedly ran into Jason at a restaurant in Back Bay. I was having dinner with Ryan, who had gradually transitioned from colleague to friend to something potentially more. Jason was with a petite blonde woman I recognized as a junior associate from his firm. The moment was awkward but revelatory. Jason appeared uncomfortable, his confident facade slipping when he saw me laughing with Ryan. The woman with him seemed nervous, checking his expression repeatedly as if gauging his mood, a behavior I recognized all too well from my own experience. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked after they left, having exchanged only brief, stilted greetings with us. Surprisingly, yes, I realized. Better than okay. What struck me most wasn't jealousy or residual attraction but recognition. I could see in his new girlfriend's anxious attentiveness the same patterns I had fallen into, and I felt a profound gratitude for my escape. Dating again was both exciting and terrifying. My relationship with Ryan developed slowly, with a carefulness on both sides that reflected past wounds. He had recently ended a long-term relationship with someone who had cheated, leaving him with his own trust issues to navigate. "I like that we're both a little cautious," he told me one evening as we walked along the Charles River. "It means we value getting it right more than getting it fast." This approach, thoughtful, communicative, respectful of boundaries, was the antithesis of the whirlwind romance Jason and I had shared. I came to appreciate the slow building of connection based on genuine compatibility rather than intensity and infatuation. By the 1-year mark after leaving Jason, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. My design business had grown enough to require a small team. My new apartment now felt like a genuine home. My relationships with family, friends, and Ryan were stronger for having weathered the storm of my breakup and recovery. Most importantly, I had rebuilt my relationship with myself. The voice in my head that had gradually adopted Jason's critical tone was replaced by one of compassion and encouragement. I recognized my own worth not through external validation but through the simple truth of my inherent value as a person deserving of respect and authentic love. The dinner party incident that had once humiliated me became a story I could tell to friends, not as a source of shame, but as the moment that ultimately set me free. The painful words Jason had hurled at me, "No one will love you like I did," transformed from a threat to a promise of better things to come. He was right, though not in the way he intended. No one would love me like he did again, because I would never again accept love that came with conditions, control, and contempt disguised as care. I had learned to recognize the difference between love and possession, between support and control, between partnership and ownership. The greatest lesson wasn't about Jason's betrayal, but about my own capacity for growth and self-respect. I had walked away from a relationship that many would have fought to save, not because I valued love too little, but because I had finally learned to value myself enough. If you've ever found yourself diminished in a relationship, questioned your own perceptions, or accepted behavior that deep down you knew was wrong, know that you're not alone. The strength to leave is already within you, waiting to be discovered. Your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. And sometimes, walking away is the most powerful act of self-love possible. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you've ever experienced double standards in your relationships or found the courage to leave a situation that wasn't serving you, share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this message. Remember, you deserve a love that expands your world, not one that shrinks it to fit someone else's expectations.